Cris Carter's televised assessment of Shedeur Sanders triggered immediate pushback from Cleveland fans, local media, and even several Browns veterans. Carter dismissed Sanders, a fifth-round pick, as unprepared to start and framed the growing interest around him as purely a byproduct of surname recognition. Since that segment aired, practice reports have told a very different story. Observers inside the Browns facility describe a rookie quarterback who is closing the gap on Kenny Pickett and Dillon Gabriel with surprising speed. Sanders first turned heads in rookie minicamp by directing the huddle with a calm that belied his inexperience. Position coaches reported that he rarely repeated mental errors during installation periods, a trait they rank highly when grading young quarterbacks. In organized team activities, he showed consistent timing on intermediate routes, kept turnover numbers low in 7-on-7 periods, and demonstrated early command of Kevin Stefanski's protection calls. That steady execution earned him a handful of first-team snaps, reps that would ordinarily have belonged to Pickett by default. By mandatory minicamp, the rotation had shifted again. Practice notes from beat reporters detailed a rise in Sanders' workload each day. Red zone series against the starting defense, 2-minute drills, and full field scrimmage possessions in which he checked out of called plays when fronts dictated it. Mary Kay Cabot, initially skeptical Sanders would challenge for game day snaps in 2025, wrote after consecutive sessions in mid-June that his footwork, release speed, and pocket management had, quote, meaningfully tightened since rookie camp. Her tone marked a clear departure from early spring projections that labeled Sanders a long-term developmental project. The broader quarterback context in Cleveland magnifies that progress. Deshaun Watson's availability and form remain uncertain after 2 injury-interrupted seasons, while Pickett's transition from Pittsburgh has been uneven. Dillon Gabriel's arm strength is evident, but coaches continue to stress hesitation in his full-field reads. Against that backdrop, Sanders' quick decision-making and mechanical efficiency have begun to look less like a pleasant surprise and more like the roster's most reliable short-term plan. Inside the locker room, acceptance has followed performance. Wide receivers cite Sanders' ball placement on outbreaking routes, noting that the ball routinely arrives on the upfield shoulder, a small but essential detail that allows for yards after the catch. Offensive linemen appreciate his pocket awareness. Joel Bitonio remarked privately that Sanders slides up instead of bailing when edge pressure flashes. Defensive backs say his eye discipline forces them to hold coverage longer than they expected against a rookie. Such cross-positional respect develops only when day-to-day tape shows tangible improvement. The reaction to Carter's critique highlights a recurring double standard applied to young black quarterbacks. Traits celebrated as swagger or confidence in other players were labeled arrogance when associated with Sanders, yet the quarterback himself has not responded publicly. There have been no subtle social media jabs, no mention of critics in interviews, only repeated references to competing for every rep and learning from veterans. That measured approach, combined with hard evidence from practice, has softened earlier doubts among coaches who prioritize demeanor as much as arm talent. Within the coaching staff, the discussion now centers on readiness thresholds. Stefanski's scheme relies heavily on quick rhythm throws, defined reads, and disciplined pocket movement. Those requirements align with Sanders' strengths: a compact release, willingness to target the middle of the field, and instinctive timing on RPO concepts carried over from his college tape. Staffers reviewing cut-ups from joint practices note that his internal clock already approximates NFL speed, a metric they did not expect to see until mid-season at best. If that trajectory continues through preseason games, the Browns face a consequential decision. Starting a 5th-round rookie 6 weeks after training camp opens would unsettle salary cap assumptions, depth chart politics, and external perceptions of organizational stability. Yet the internal mandate remains clear: the most prepared quarterback will play. That standard places Sanders in genuine contention because every practice metric used to grade readiness, turnover ratio, red zone efficiency, third down conversion rate has trended in his favor since early June. The organizational stakes are considerable. Cleveland has cycled through starting quarterbacks at a startling pace over the past decade, shifting from first-round investments like Baker Mayfield to high-cost gambles such as Watson, each move packaged as the long-awaited solution. A rookie chosen outside the first 100 picks ascending to the top of the depth chart would challenge long-held league assumptions about draft pedigree and opportunity. It would also validate the evaluation philosophy that prioritized Sanders' intangibles: processing speed, leadership presence, over conventional arm strength thresholds that pushed him down the draft board. Carter's televised remarks now sit awkwardly alongside daily updates from Berea. His critique relied on pre-draft labels and the presumption that a late-round passer with a famous father would need a redshirt year. Practice film contradicts that stance. Sanders checks protections at the line, manipulates safeties with shoulder fakes, and has reduced turnover-worthy throws in full-speed sessions to single digits. Statistics normally cited for veteran backups, not rookies. The longer that evidence accumulates, the more Carter's comments appear rooted in legacy bias rather than objective performance review. None of this guarantees Sanders will open the season on their center. Preseason defenses test quarterbacks in ways practice cannot. Defensive coordinators will disguise pressure and boundary rotation to force late decisions. Sanders must show he can adjust protections and exploit mismatches without the benefit of a controlled environment. Yet within the Browns facility, the conversation has shifted from if he will be ready to when. Quiet confidence from Amari Cooper and other veterans suggests they believe Sanders can steady an offense searching for consistency more than highlight reel heroics. Sanders' rise also affects long-term roster calculus. If he earns the job and performs competently, Cleveland gains starter-level production on a cost-controlled rookie contract, freeing cap space allocated to other positions. That scenario could reshape roster-building strategy in a division featuring Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson, quarterbacks whose contracts consume significant percentages of team payroll. A capable, low-cost starter would allow the Browns to reinforce their offensive line and secondary while retaining core veterans, a competitive advantage few teams enjoy. For now, the focal point remains daily improvement. Sanders continues to arrive before sunrise, reviewing the previous day's install with the quarterback coach, then staying after practice to throw on-air routes with receivers low on the depth chart. Coaches track those habits closely because consistent routine underpins performance when adversity strikes in live games. Each incremental gain strengthens the argument that readiness depends on preparation and aptitude, not draft slot. Carter's segment reminded the league how quickly assessments can become outdated when they lean on perception over evidence. Sanders' steady climb up the depth chart underscores the counterpoint. In the NFL, tape is the final arbiter. Should Sanders translate practice efficiency to preseason success, the Browns may discover that the solution to their long-standing quarterback riddle arrived quietly in the 5th round, carrying little more than confidence and a willingness to work. The rumors have ended. The decision is public. Cleveland Browns owner Jimmy Haslam has informed every level of the organization that unless an unforeseen injury intervenes, Shedeur Sanders will start at quarterback in Week 1. The announcement is not an informal suggestion or a quiet push in the background. It is a direct order. Multiple independent reports, amplified most visibly by Colin Cowherd, confirm that Haslam delivered the directive himself. From the owner's viewpoint, the logic is simple. No one else on the roster offers the same combination of talent, leadership, and long-term upside. Joe Flacco is approaching the twilight of his career. Kenny Pickett has shown flashes but remains inconsistent. Dylan Gabriel, taken in the 3rd round, is a developmental project. By contrast, Haslam believes Sanders can alter the franchise's trajectory immediately, and he refuses to allow internal hesitation to stall that possibility. The standoff traces back to April. General manager Andrew Berry and head coach Kevin Stefanski entered the draft wanting a low-profile prospect who would fit quietly into the existing depth chart. They prioritized scheme familiarity, modest public attention, and a clear developmental timeline. When the board lined up, they reached for Gabriel in round 3, reasoning that an early investment would justify keeping a rookie on ice behind the veterans. But Sanders continued to slide, first through day 2, then deep into round 5. Haslam watched the names come off the board, convinced the league's bias against Deion Sanders' outspoken son was obscuring legitimate first-round talent. When Cleveland's 5th-round pick arrived and Sanders was still available, Haslam intervened. He did more than approve the choice. He overrode the original plan, making it clear that the organization would select Sanders and give him every chance to compete. From that moment on, the Browns' internal narrative splintered into 2 camps: those ready to accelerate around their owner's vision, and those still trying to protect their original approach. Once rookie minicamp began, Sanders erased much of the speculation. He commanded huddles, processed coverages quickly, and delivered throws with anticipation that belied his draft slot. Teammates noted his willingness to accept blame for missed timing, then correct the error without dramatics. While Flacco and Pickett split most first-team reps, Sanders treated limited opportunities as full-speed auditions. During organized team activities, he identified blitz looks, redirected protections, and consistently found his second read when the primary route was covered. More than one defensive veteran told local reporters that Sanders looks like the best arm in the building. That assessment forced Berry and Stefanski to reevaluate their timetable. They could no longer label Sanders a long-term project without contradicting on-field evidence. Drafting Gabriel 2 rounds earlier had provided the staff an excuse to slow roll Sanders' ascent. Coaches could point to investment cost, meeting room familiarity, and installation comfort to justify Gabriel's snap share. Yet each practice rep in which Sanders outperformed the third rounder weakened that shield. Behind closed doors, position coaches began requesting more Sanders film for cut-ups, and offensive assistants quietly shifted meeting questions toward concepts the rookie already executed well. By mid-June, Barry himself started describing Sanders not as a developmental asset, but as a competitive option. Those subtle linguistic changes signaled the front office's recognition that the narrative had moved beyond their control.
Haslam's history with quarterbacks is well documented. His pushes for Johnny Manziel, Baker Mayfield, and Deshaun Watson were high-visibility swings, each driven in part by a desire to generate excitement as well as wins. Critics highlight those choices to question his evaluation track record, yet Haslam perceives Sanders differently. Where Manziel carried off-field concerns, Sanders brings a reputation for professionalism. Where Mayfield's leadership style divided veterans, Sanders' approach has united receivers and linemen. Where Watson's trade involved unprecedented controversy, Sanders arrived at minimal draft cost. Haslam sees a rare chance to capture star potential without mortgaging the future, and he is unwilling to cede that upside to cautious pacing. Cleveland supporters, weary of revolving door quarterbacks, have rallied around Sanders with unexpected speed. Sales of customized Sanders number 2 jerseys surged within days of rookie minicamp. Training camp ticket requests spiked once local media circulated videos of Sanders making NFL-caliber anticipation throws during 7-on-7 periods. The mood in Northeast Ohio has changed from tentative hope to active belief. Longtime season ticket holders who once shrugged at preseason storylines now debate Sanders' footwork at neighborhood barbecues. Social media engagement for Brown's content has climbed, driven by highlight compilations of the rookie threading seam passes between linebackers and safeties. All of this places Kevin Stefanski in a fragile position. If he opens week 1 with a veteran starter and the offense sputters, criticism will be swift. Each stalled drive will be interpreted as evidence that he ignored the owner's edict and the fan base's intuition. Conversely, if he names Sanders the starter solely under pressure, any early struggles could be framed as proof that Sanders was rushed, further exposing Stefanski to blame. The only sustainable solution is conviction. Either stand behind a veteran with clear strategic reasoning or embrace Sanders fully and structure the offense around his strengths. Splitting the difference, rotating series, delaying first-team reps, or using vague competition language will satisfy no one and likely jeopardize locker room clarity. Sanders' personal approach has reinforced Haslam's confidence. Instead of taking post-draft downtime, he traveled to Texas to train in full Browns gear at facilities near his father's home. The leaked clip of Sanders executing footwork drills in helmet and pads wasn't a marketing ploy. It was a glimpse into a quarterback visualizing Week 1 live. Team personnel who viewed the footage recognized purposeful rehearsal, cadence calls, pocket movement against simulated pressure, and follow-through adjustments based on imagined rush lanes. Observers asked why a rookie would conduct such intense solo sessions in May. The answer is straightforward. Sanders does not view himself as a developmental pick. He considers himself the starting quarterback of the Cleveland Browns and prepares accordingly. On pure ability, Sanders' arm strength ranks with the league average for starters. His accuracy to the intermediate middle, an area where the Browns' current scheme generates high-leverage completions, has drawn consistent praise from receivers. The primary areas still under review are blitz recognition and live bullets and timing on deep outbreaking routes versus press coverage. Those developmental checkpoints are significant, yet daily practice reps show acceleration. In contrast, Flacco's mobility limits the boot action game that Stefanski installed to help Mayfield early in his tenure. Pickett can extend plays, but struggles to attack tight windows between linebackers and safeties, an essential requirement in Cleveland schematics. Gabriel remains an unknown at NFL speed. Thus, the competitive landscape favors Sanders sooner than the coaching staff originally planned. The franchise now stands at an inflection point. Haslam's mandate, the locker room's growing support, and the fan base's enthusiasm all tilt towards Sanders. The front office's earlier strategy, anchored in patience and quiet development, is increasingly untenable. Barry's shift in messaging indicates grudging alignment, but final authority over the depth chart rests with the coaching staff, unless ownership directly intervenes on game day decisions. A move rare, but not unprecedented in the NFL. Should Stefanski align with the owner and name Sanders the starter before preseason concludes, he can claim proactive vision and tailor the offense through training camp. Should he resist and open with a veteran who falters, he risks rapid loss of credibility and possibly his position. Either path carries pressure, but only one aligns with the momentum sweeping through the building. For 2 decades, the Browns have cycled quarterbacks without securing a stable star. Each new hope, whether draft pick or trade acquisition, has collapsed under injuries, inconsistency, or organizational disarray. The possibility that Sanders could finally anchor the position is not merely a football storyline. It is a potential cultural reset for a fan base defined by resilience. Haslam's insistence reflects that awareness. Cleveland needs a leader who can win on Sundays and project confidence every other day of the week. Sanders has shown he can shoulder expectations without retreating from scrutiny. That trait, more than arm talent alone, is why the owner views him as indispensable. Voluntary workouts transition to mandatory minicamp next week. If Sanders receives a substantial share of first-team snaps, observers will interpret it as the staff's acknowledgement that the competition is tilting decisively. A public declaration may not follow immediately, but every rep allocation is a signal. If, however, the staff continues funneling most top unit snaps to Flacco or Pickett, tension will escalate. Local media will question the evaluation process. National analysts will debate the merits of letting a rookie learn through live action versus controlled practice. Inside the facility, players will recognize any disconnect between performance and opportunity, and unity could fray.
The Browns have reached a decisive moment. Shedeur Sanders has demonstrated the skill, poise, and work ethic to justify starting in Week 1. Jimmy Haslam has publicly positioned him as the future, and by implication, the present of the franchise. Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry must either endorse that vision or brace for the consequences of delaying it. For Cleveland fans, the significance is clear. A legitimate chance to exit the cycle of quarterback uncertainty and rally behind a signal caller capable of commanding the field and galvanizing the city. Whether that opportunity is seized promptly or postponed will define the Browns' 2025 season and likely the tenure of the decision makers involved. They have never loathed college football itself. They have resisted the people determined to reshape it. When Deion Sanders, black, direct, unapologetic, walks into a room of power brokers and speaks with authority instead of deference, critics recoil. During his playing days, they complained about celebrations and gold chains. Now that he is a head coach, mentor, and father, they label him something more polite, but just as dismissive: a problem. At Big 12 Media Days, Sanders addressed the accelerating chaos of the name, image, likeness market. He said college football needs a salary cap, not to hobble players, but to impose order on a system that showers unproven freshmen with 7-figure promises while the rest of a roster hunts for scraps. He called the situation unsustainable. Within hours, ESPN commentator Paul Feinbaum branded him a hypocrite, arguing that Sanders profited from NIL at Jackson State and now wants rules only because his most marketable athletes have moved on. The accusation spread quickly because it fit a comfortable storyline. Outspoken black coach gains from change, then protests when the advantage disappears. That framing ignores context. Sanders never criticized players earning money. At Jackson State, he urged corporate sponsors to partner with athletes who had been invisible to major brands for decades. What he wants now is stability, standardized guidelines, basic financial literacy, and roster balance that prevents locker rooms from fracturing over uneven payouts. When other coaches, Nick Saban, Dabo Swinney, Lane Kiffin, voiced similar concerns, they were praised for foresight. When Sanders spoke, the tone shifted to suspicion. The difference is not the message, it is the messenger. Feinbaum's response followed a familiar script. When black leaders question the structure of the sport, their motives are interrogated, their credibility attacked, and their competence doubted. He did not level the same charge at Jimbo Fisher when Fisher complained that NIL disturbed recruiting. He stayed silent when Kiffin lamented the transfer portal. But Sanders, who raised enrollment and television ratings at Jackson State, brought unprecedented attention to Colorado in one season and consistently mentors players beyond football, was called opportunistic. Feinbaum dismissed the cultural impact Sanders created: the exposure for historically black colleges, the draft pick developed, the infrastructure improved, reducing his work to a marketing stunt dependent on star sons Shedeur and Shiloh or two-way standout Travis Hunter. Sanders did not retaliate. He returned to practice, media obligations, and recruiting. His confidence is rooted in faith and in the responsibility he feels toward young athletes whose lives will extend decades beyond their highlight clips. When he asks for NIL boundaries, he is thinking about freshmen handed large sums without guidance, families unprepared for sudden wealth, and programs that abandon kids once production stalls. He has watched that cycle from the inside. He wants protections, not restrictions. Critics predicted Colorado would fade once Shedeur and Hunter leave. Instead, Sanders signed blue-chip quarterback G.J. Lewis and a wave of transfers eager to join a program that values personal growth as much as on-field wins. Recruits see a coach who challenges the status quo, who places black culture at the program's center without apology, and who will remain visible when social media buzz cools. They recognize that Sanders does not chase attention. Attention follows his results. Media outlets reduced the upcoming Buffalo season to a win total prop.
6 victories, give or take. Sanders is playing a longer game. He wants to show young athletes, especially black athletes, that they can lead authentically, speak with conviction, and refuse to shrink for access. Success measured only by the scoreboard misses the point. If Sanders builds men who graduate with financial literacy, self-confidence, and community awareness, he will consider the mission successful, even if Colorado finishes with 5 wins instead of 10. None of that registers with commentators invested in an older hierarchy. For them, leadership should remain predictable, reserved posture, muted tone, minimal cultural expression. Sanders contradicts that image. The possibility that his methods could spread to other coaches, to other programs, threatens a model that has kept decision-making and revenue streams concentrated for generations. So the debate is not about hypocrisy or payroll ceilings. It is about control of the narrative and who is deemed qualified to write it. Sanders refuses to surrender that authority. He knows order is necessary. He also knows whose voices have been ignored whenever real reform is discussed. By speaking plainly, he forces television panels, athletic directors, and conference commissioners to confront issues they would rather defer: financial education, equitable resource distribution, and consistent national standards. Whether Colorado exceeds betting lines this fall will not change the trajectory Sanders has already set. He made Boulder relevant, energized recruiting beyond traditional power corridors, and broadened college football's cultural reach. That influence will persist long after social media debates cool. If his call for NIL structure eventually becomes policy, as the NCAA and Congress now contemplate, Feinbaum's soundbite will fade, while Sanders' imprint endures. In the end, accusations of hypocrisy say more about the accuser than the coach. Sanders has remained consistent: empower athletes, hold adults accountable, and inject stability before unchecked money corrodes the locker room. The people who stand to lose clout in that environment prefer the chaos they can manipulate. Sanders prefers a system that nurtures the players who make the sport worth watching. His advocacy is rooted in experience, not self-interest, and his critics will have to decide whether to engage with that reality or keep shouting from the sidelines.
Grab hold of the starting job.
Yes, but I don't think we're going to know which one until we get deep into August. Now, I think, we tracked the reps everybody was getting at practice throughout the OTAs and minicamp. But when you talk to people there, they just want to make sure everybody got what they needed. And that, Kenny Pickett, we find out if he has the goods to be the starter. Joe Flacco, they back him off a little bit. He's 40. He may not need as much. The rookies, Shedeur, Sanders, and Dylan Gabriel, what do they need to learn to make the transition from the college game to the pro game? That's what the spring was about for the Browns quarterbacks. Now,
Shedeur Sanders has moved from social media celebrity to on-field standout, and ESPN now lists him among its first-team candidates. Reactions are split. Some fans are impressed while others are skeptical. Whether this reflects Deion Sanders' long-term strategy or simply Shedeur's rapid development, the story is drawing widespread attention. Here's a look at what led to this moment.
They never planned on taking him. The problem is, like Ocho Cinco said, you got somebody that has endeared himself to the locker room. And guess what? The difference between him and Tim Tebow, the biggest one, is he can play. He can throw the ball. Tim Tebow running around being an H-back. He can throw the ball. And he's done everything he needs to do. He ain't saying nothing. He ain't rocking the boat. He ain't mad about the reps. He ain't mad about none of that. All the people out there want to see is this, like Tyver said earlier. We want to see what he can do with Jerry Jeudy.
Online reactions are sharply divided. Some fans strongly support Sanders, while others argue he is overrated. Traditional analysts cite statistics and claim his recognition comes mainly from his father's name. Sanders supporters are actively celebrating his rise and already predicting a future NFL career. Sports media outlets have made his candidacy a central topic of debate. The discussion now extends beyond statistics and victories to include his marketability, public image, and on-field presence.
Sorry, is Shedeur Sanders going to get a chance to win this job? Do you believe he gets a legit shot to win this job?
Listen, I think first of all, the action's going to really start in training camp. Like, forget all the OTA stuff. You don't win a job in OTA. The real action starts in training camp. And just like Shedeur said, during the mini camp, when it's time to take your reps, you got to make the most of it. Because I think early on, there's going to be a lot. Remember, Joe Flacco didn't hardly practice in OTAs and mini camps because they were giving the young guys.
Right.
So when he gets his opportunity, he's going to have to make the most of it.
Analysts are closely reviewing game footage to evaluate Sanders' decisions and mechanics, while others examine his social media activity to see how he balances content creation with quarterback duty. Shedeur Sanders' placement on ESPN's early first-team list has taken over the college football conversation. Supporters circulate his highlights and argue that his on-field production and leadership justify the honor. Skeptics claim the recognition relies too heavily on
on his family name and question whether his resume is strong enough for first-team status. Analysts are rewatching game footage to assess his reads, accuracy, and pocket presence, while others examine how he balances a high-profile social media presence with quarterback responsibilities. The debate has pushed other storylines, such as conference realignment and NIL issues, into the background, leaving fans and commentators focused on Sanders' performance, marketability, and overall impact on the sport.
I'll keep saying it. I believe Shedeur Sanders should play more games than any other quarterback on this roster this year, because he's the only guy that I look at and say they might have something here. Because I'm telling you right now, they left night one of the draft saying we are taking our quarterback next year. So it's on Shedeur or Dylan or Kenny, probably not Joe,
to change their mind.
To change their mind.
But you got to find out. You got to find out.
Opinions differ on whether Sanders is benefiting from his family name or simply showing real progress, but the attention is undeniable. Social media is flooded with edited images elevating him to legendary status. Critics argue the first-team nod is driven by hype and marketability, while supporters point to his flashes of strong arm talent, field vision, and decision-making. Regardless of motive, the announcement has dominated the football news cycle and intensified debate over how much of his rise is performance-based versus media-driven. Highlight reels rarely show Sanders' turnovers, late-game mistakes, or inconsistent stretches. Being named to a first-team watch list suggests sustained dominance, something Sanders has displayed only in flashes. His selection appears driven as much by brand recognition and media appeal as by performance. ESPN's decision has intensified debate. Data-driven critics post statistics that question his resume, while passionate supporters predict awards and future NFL success. Commentators recall a time when first-team consideration required years of proven excellence. Yet many fans already see the announcement as confirmation that Sanders is on track for major college football honors.
Shedeur Sanders has earned first-team reps when training camp commences later in July. I'm not saying like he's the first guy up when you do 11 on 11s day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 at training camp. I'm not necessarily saying that, but he's the one quarterback that we didn't get a chance to see take reps with the ones. But I think Shedeur has a chance to like make this conversation interesting if he gets those reps with the ones and he has the same success that he did with the 2s, the 3s, and the 4s. I have confidence he can show you something, but I got to see it. We all got to see it before we can actually judge that.
Some believe Deion Sanders is already preparing for an award ceremony, while others are furious, threatening to protest ESPN's credibility over Shedeur's first-team mention. Critics argue that honoring Sanders without a full season of elite play undermines college football standards. Supporters insist his performance and profile justify the recognition. The debate reflects a broader clash between traditional merit-based evaluation and modern brand-driven visibility. In today's landscape, first-team consideration is no longer only about statistics. It also involves marketability and audience engagement. Whether welcomed or rejected, Sanders commands attention and embodies the sport's shift toward both performance and personal brand.
You made an interesting point. So I tend to have the drip, drip, drip. This was my Johnny Manziel theory, is that everybody makes mistakes, especially when you're young. But if I see 2, 3, 4, 5, then you've got a plumbing issue. It's not just you didn't close the faucet. So there's about 6 pieces of video in college where Shedeur was a little bit of a brat, whatever. Then there's the legendary cringy draft room. Didn't love that as a B prospect. Then there's back-to-back speeding tickets, both over 90, and a missed arraignment.
The NFL is navigating unexpected headlines after a former Browns coach publicly defended Shedeur Sanders in response to reports of multiple speeding tickets. The coach's statement has sparked extensive online debate. Supporters welcome the show of loyalty, while critics question the motive. Sanders now finds himself at the center of an unforeseen controversy, and observers want to know why a Cleveland coach is standing so firmly in his corner. The story is developing rapidly and continues to draw intense attention.
When it came out that he got a speeding ticket, I said it's not really that big a deal. I feel very differently about it now. Over 40 miles an hour over the speed limit, less than 2 weeks after you just got a ticket. I don't know if that's entitlement or immaturity. There's got to be some teams that are feeling very good right now that they didn't draft him.
Observers are focusing on Shedeur Sanders' recent speeding ticket, treating the violation as a measure of his character and sidelining his athletic, academic, and philanthropic accomplishments. The incident, driving 15 miles per hour over the limit in a borrowed Lamborghini, has drawn sharp criticism. In response, a former Cleveland Browns coach has taken the opportunity to comment, even though the franchise is widely viewed as unstable due to its frequent coaching changes and limited on-field success. By defending Sanders, he presents himself as an authority on discipline and leadership. The statement, coming from an organization seldom praised for stability, has nonetheless attracted considerable attention across the league.
You want to defend him a little bit. I thought this was an interesting take.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting that you said you were out because of the speeding tickets. To me, that's such a minor thing. You were so high on him in terms of his completion percentage in OTAs, and I thought that was a little aggressive on your part. But with the speeding tickets, I got a speeding ticket the first night of the draft, my first year there. I thought maybe I'd get the benefit of the doubt, but they gave it to me anyways.
As soon as the former Browns coach defended Shedeur Sanders, social media erupted with commentary, resembling the volume of draft night coverage. Posts and opinions appeared within minutes, and criticism escalated rapidly. Detractors amplified Sanders' minor speeding violation, while supporters argued that such reactions were disproportionate to a single traffic citation. Shedeur Sanders received 2 speeding citations, and the minor traffic issue quickly drew national attention. Before considering the former Browns coach's response, it is useful to clarify the facts. Sanders, son of Pro Football Hall of Famer Deion Sanders and a current college quarterback, was twice ticketed for exceeding the limit while driving a high-performance vehicle. Commentary on social media escalated rapidly, with critics framing the incident as a significant character concern, even as the league has historically tolerated far more serious legal transgressions. Stepping into the debate, a former Cleveland Browns coach, best known for a tenure filled with losses and contested decisions, issued a strong public defense. He argued that 2 speeding tickets should not define Sanders' reputation or overshadow his on-field talent and community work, urging a balanced assessment of the player's actions.
I don't love it from a 5th-round draft pick. I don't love that it happened multiple times, but I do think that this is the first time he's been away from his dad, and there's gonna be some growing pains now. Would I sell my stock on it like you are? Not because of a couple speeding tickets, especially in light of the problems that Brown's quarterback room has had to deal with legally in the last few years. I mean, this is nothing.
The debate quickly shifted from 2 speeding citations to broader claims about integrity, growth, and leadership. The former Browns coach framed the infractions as moments for personal development and urged observers to view them in context. Critics responded forcefully. Some called for disciplinary action, others questioned Deion Sanders' parenting, and a few sought to discredit the coach himself, despite his professional record already being widely analyzed across the league. The reaction underscores an apparent inconsistency in public standards. Fans often overlook on-field confrontations, heated sideline arguments, and other significant controversies, yet they treated Sanders' routine traffic offenses, speeding without evidence of reckless endangerment, as indicators of serious character flaws. If such minor violations were adopted as the primary measure of morality in professional football, many players would face similar criticism. Sports media amplified the story almost immediately. Television panels dissected Shedeur Sanders' decision-making, treating 2 speeding tickets as indicators of deeper character concerns. Networks aired detailed segments under banners such as red flags and road rage, repeatedly questioning whether the citations might affect his draft evaluation. Although Sanders is already regarded as a first-round prospect, analysts emphasize that NFL teams value discipline and legal awareness when forming final assessments. Many commentators overlook the fact that other high-profile players have faced more serious offenses without similar scrutiny. Throughout the coverage, the former Browns coach defended Sanders, portraying him as a talented quarterback subjected to disproportionate criticism in a culture that expects near-perfect conduct. His argument was thorough and methodical, asserting that the traffic violation should not overshadow Sanders' skills, work ethic, or future potential. Commentators point out that the coach's intervention was not entirely selfless. He recognized the publicity potential. One day he was an overlooked figure from a struggling Browns era, the next he was a trending name across sports media. The discussion quickly expanded beyond Sanders' speeding citations to questions of image management and narrative control. Critics demanded disciplinary measures, public apologies, team sanctions, and formal statements, yet their objections seemed directed less at the traffic infractions themselves and more at Sanders' high profile, confidence, and resistance to tradition
traditional expectations. In practical terms, Sanders' brand remains intact. The coach secures renewed relevance, and the episode supplies another headline in the ongoing story of modern football. The next time Sanders is seen in a high-performance car, the debate will likely reignite, focused not on speed limits, but on the broader culture of the league. Meanwhile, new voices continue to join the conversation. Broadcaster Colin Cowherd has already weighed in, offering his own reassessment of the incident and its broader implications.
Breaking news, Shedeur Sanders last night was pulled over going 100 miles per hour. All right, he clocked 101, 41 miles an hour over the speed limit in Cleveland. He will have the opportunity to fight the ticket in court. Now, I'm not exactly sure where he was pulled over, whether or not that it was in Ohio or whether or not that it was in his home state. But typically when you're going 40 over, that's flirting with the line of reckless driving. Folks, I gotta tell you, I don't understand what it is with these young men driving at absurd speed.
Colin Cowherd's view of Shedeur Sanders shifted abruptly. Days after praising the quarterback's poise and skill, he appeared on air to declare that Sanders is overhyped, unfocused, and distracted by celebrity. The reversal was immediate, without any gradual reconsideration. Cowherd now frames Sanders' 2 speeding tickets as evidence of poor judgment, even though he has defended other quarterbacks facing far more serious off-field issues. The sudden, wholesale withdrawal of support leaves viewers questioning the consistency of Cowherd's criteria and illustrates how quickly media narratives can change when minor incidents receive outsized attention.
This is
okay.
nothing.
Okay. How much of this is, I mean, Jimmy Haslam has his hands all over Manziel, has his hands all over Deshaun Watson, admitted it, man enough to admit it. I saw the reaction in the draft room when they took Shedeur Sanders. It's pretty obvious it wasn't the coach and the GM's pick. How much is this team has 8 last place finishes in 13 years owning it. How much of this is we don't have a very good owner here like Washington, D.C. and the Commanders?
Yeah, I didn't love the owner stepping in and saying, hey, you got to take this guy in the 5th round. And I doubt they'll ever admit to it.
While Colin Cowherd urged teams to move on from Shedeur Sanders, former Browns coach Eric Mangini offered a more measured response. Mangini, whose tenure in Cleveland was marked by mixed results, used his platform to provide context rather than condemnation. Instead of sensationalizing the speeding violations, he encouraged viewers to consider Sanders' circumstances. A 21-year-old quarterback whose life is scrutinized both on and off the field. Mangini acknowledged that the tickets were mistakes, but emphasized that they do not by themselves define Sanders' character or future. He noted the extraordinary attention athletes receive today, combining the responsibilities of quarterback, public figure, and social media presence. Under such pressure, missteps are magnified, and criticism multiplies quickly. Mangini concluded that any evaluation of Sanders should weigh the totality of his behavior, performance, and growth, rather than isolate 2 traffic citations as decisive evidence of poor judgment.
Shedeur is lighting it up in practice every day. You're not even a half bit curious to see what he could do with the ones. That makes no sense. And then on top of all of that, you got players going on podcasts and talking to people in the media saying this guy is really good. Like, this guy is legit. So even your peers respect you enough. How is it that the coaches can't see that? It always starts with the players, where the players like, hey, you see that? You seen that pass he threw?
The Cleveland Browns were taken by surprise when quarterback Shedeur Sanders stepped in for first-team snaps, asserting control of the drill and instantly highlighting deficiencies across the rest of the room. His confident command forced coaches to pause practice clips, reevaluate progressions, and consider immediate adjustments to the depth chart. Within minutes, discussions spread throughout the facility and online forums as fans weighed what Sanders' showing means for the current starters. The organization now faces an urgent, data-driven decision on whether Sanders should move up permanently. Shedeur Sanders arrived at Browns practice, took several first-team reps, and the entire quarterback group immediately felt the pressure. Coaches erased the whiteboard and reviewed their plans. Staff members exchanged concerned comments, and observers began asking whether Sanders was positioned to assume a larger role.
Tony, every year we see at least 1 to 2 teams. They were in last place in their division the year before. No one thought they'd be good, and then they were good. It almost seems like no one's even assuming the Browns can be that, but we see it happen every year. And I get the quarterback stuff, but like, correct me if I'm wrong, Tony. The Browns are trying to run the football, play good defense, not turn the ball over in the passing game, and try and take advantage when they can, correct? That's what they're trying to do.
That was the 2020 offense.
The Cleveland Browns are still searching for stability at quarterback. Deshaun Watson is yet to deliver consistent starter-level production that justifies his contract, and each game renews doubts about whether he can regain peak form. Behind him, rookie Dorian Thompson-Robinson shows promise but remains inexperienced and unpolished. Coaches are evaluating alternatives each week and may need to adjust the depth chart if progress stalls. The roster around them is built to contend now, so ongoing uncertainty under center is increasingly costly.
As we talk about, we do believe in best player available. We do believe in positional value, and we didn't necessarily expect him to be available in the fifth round, and so we love adding competition to every position room and adding him to compete with the guys that are already in there. We felt like that was the appropriate thing to do.
The Browns quarterback group is unsettled. Deshaun Watson has yet to provide the reliable, high-level play his contract demands, while rookie Dorian Thompson-Robinson remains promising but unpolished. Depth behind them consists mostly of veterans whose experience lies more in holding clipboards than leading offenses. The coaching staff needs an immediate answer, not a 3-year development project. Shedeur Sanders enters as that potential solution. At Colorado, he passed for more than 3,200 yards despite working behind one of college football's poorest offensive lines, consistently demonstrating poise, quick processing, and accurate ball placement under heavy pressure. Film shows steady reads and disciplined footwork, traits that offset concerns that his profile is built on family name or media attention. Cleveland viewed the signing as a low-risk, high-reward move. Early in camp, Sanders received a handful of first-team snaps intended merely as an evaluation. Those plays quickly changed practice tempo. The ball came out on time, receivers hit their landmarks, and the defense struggled to adjust. Coaches immediately expanded the review using phrases such as evaluate every option, an indication that the depth chart was no longer fixed. Watson sensed the scrutiny. Thompson-Robinson increased his urgency. Within minutes, competition in the quarterback room intensified. Sanders repeated that performance in subsequent sessions. His footwork remained clean, progression sharp, and throws firm and precise. Each strong rep forced staff to reassess the plan to keep him buried on the developmental track. The broader context magnifies the pressure. Cleveland's roster is built to contend now. Fans are weary of quarterback turnover, and the front office cannot afford another costly misstep under center. Around the league, rookie passers rarely wait multiple seasons anymore. Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, CJ Stroud, and even late pick Brock Purdy established that precedent. If Watson opens the regular season and struggles, public calls for Sanders will grow, especially if the rookie flashes in preseason. Alternatively, another team could attempt to acquire him if Cleveland hesitates to elevate his role. Each scenario underscores the same reality. Sanders' emergence has turned a routine camp evaluation into a critical decision point for the franchise.
And we saw Dillon Gabriel go 11-on-11 with the first team, Shedeur Sanders go 11-on-11 with the second unit. So that was really the big wrinkle today.
Yes, and of course, it was the first time that we have seen Shedeur Sanders get any of those coveted 11-on-11 reps. Of course, again, it wasn't with the first team offense or against the first team defense, but it's progress. And that means that he's going in the right direction, that the arrow is pointing up. He's coming up the learning curve. So that's good for him. And I actually thought just overall, he had a better day than Dillon had today. He completed more passes. He was more on point. In fact, in that 11-on-11 period, he threw a near touchdown.
Desperation can push franchises toward aggressive decisions, especially when their quarterback options appear unconvincing or outdated. One scenario now emerging is that Sanders earns enough confidence to take full preseason reps with the starters, forcing Cleveland to revisit a depth chart it believed was settled at the beginning of July. His practices demonstrate that the excitement around him is grounded in measurable performance. Accurate, high-velocity passes against first-team defenses, and confident command of the huddle. Each strong outing also heightens league-wide interest. Rival scouts adjust evaluations, and general managers revisit their notes, aware that a viable young quarterback may soon become available. Inside the facility, the personnel staff must balance short-term results with long-term roster planning, knowing that an early move could reshape salary cap allocations and locker room dynamics. The pressure on Watson and Thompson-Robinson escalates accordingly. Both must produce visible progress to maintain their current roles. Cleveland's recent history shows how quickly promising quarterback situations can devolve into controversy. The franchise has turned potential breakthroughs into organizational turmoil before, so observers remain cautious about how this competition will unfold.
So the Shedeur Sanders, I want to talk about this. So here's a prime example. Shedeur Sanders, they had 3-day mini camp for the Cleveland Browns. And Now, Jimmy Haslam actually has some money. The Bengals owners and the Rooneys are near the bottom of the league in net worth. But what the Browns have is what I would call the Buffalo Bills used to have this years ago, pre-Josh Allen.
What are Browns veterans saying about Shedeur Sanders behind closed doors? According to internal discussions, the feedback goes beyond casual praise. Several veterans describe his performance as franchise level. Private locker room conversations compare his command of the offense to established starters. And one senior assistant reportedly called him Sunday ready after a single walkthrough. The consensus is that front office staff and coaches have taken serious notice. Inside the Browns facility, informal conversations circulate among players and coaches. These remarks carry significant weight in personnel evaluations and often influence practice rotations. When veterans speak this strongly, the message typically reaches decision makers quickly, especially during roster planning. In short, the internal perception of Sanders is already affecting how the staff views the current quarterback depth chart.
Browns vets kind of weigh in on Shedeur Sanders and how he's been since he arrived in Cleveland, in Pound Town. And I think it's very, very important that we discuss it, because it'd be really easy for these vets to, this wasn't like a on-the-record interviews. This is just kind of back channels into what the vets are saying, the rumors, but the sources telling us. And we have a couple quotes, but Shedeur Sanders, Cleveland Browns, it seems like it's going well. And it's almost like you don't want to talk about it.
At the center of the growing internal buzz is Shedeur Sanders, the rookie who entered Berea with late-round expectations but is being discussed privately as a potential long-term starter. This is not a routine camp tale about an extra arm taking practice snaps. Sanders has seasoned teammates, players with playoff mileage, quietly reassessing his ceiling. Observers who overlook these conversations risk missing one of Cleveland's most deliberate personnel moves in years. Sanders is not on the roster because of his surname. The Browns reviewed their quarterback depth, weighed costs, and chose a controlled, development-oriented option they believe can stabilize the position. His presence is already changing practice dynamics. Veterans notice his pocket awareness, adjust routes to his timing, and acknowledge that he processes coverage at an advanced level for a first-year player. Leadership patterns in the huddle feel different. Sanders delivers with precision and composure that challenge defenders to reevaluate their calls. The strategic upside is clear. A 4-year rookie contract offers cap flexibility while other franchises cycle through expensive stopgaps. Coaches and front office staff view Sanders as a calculated investment, not a publicity experiment. Outside chatter still focuses on Joe Flacco's age or Kenny Pickett's development. Inside the facility, however, veterans pause film sessions to dissect Sanders' ball placement and progression speed. Position coaches highlight clips where he works through reads decisively and delivers on time, traits rarely attributed to rookies. Sanders' confidence is measured rather than theatrical. He moves as though the NFL tempo is familiar, and that calm spreads across the roster. Experienced defenders are rechecking the depth chart and asking if the quarterback competition is tighter than publicly acknowledged.
Great kid, and whether it's a following that he's earned, I mean, that's something that he's done a great job of interacting with fans, and but he is a great kid. You guys will get to know him more. He's working like crazy, just like all the guys. He's another young man. These rookies, my office is downstairs. As they got to walk by my office as they come in. They come in early. And Shedeur, just like all those guys, he's in there early. He's getting his work done.
He has not yet secured the starting job. Evaluations so far come only from brief practice periods, no comeback drives, no national headlines, just steady execution in shorts and helmets. In a league that celebrates splashy debuts, Shedeur Sanders is earning trust rep by rep. Veterans typically withhold judgment until late in camp, yet several are already studying his footwork and timing, which suggests genuine respect. Inside the building, coaches sense that the Browns may have finally found a stabilizing presence at quarterback. Cleveland's recent history underscores why this matters. The team has started 9 quarterbacks over the past 2 seasons, an indicator of instability rather than depth. Sanders arrives with composure, arm strength, and a well-known surname, so any sign of readiness is magnified. Financial context also plays a role. The Browns are allocating a significant portion of the salary cap to Deshaun Watson, whose performance has not matched that investment. To manage costs, the front office signed 4 additional quarterbacks on low-impact contracts. Together, they account for far less than Watson's annual cap figure. If Sanders continues on his current trajectory, that structure could give Cleveland both competitive clarity and much-needed financial flexibility.
He's the only person who's come out and say, hey, man, this dude look kind of good, man. Let me tell you what I heard. A lot of people reaching out to players in the locker room and stuff. To me, I think this is it's a red herring. like, I'm supposed to suspend myself to disbelief that he was going to look bad. I've never expected him to look bad to start with. The 5th round quarterback stuff, that's involving perceptions, pre-draft analysis, and other teams.
Cleveland's veterans have endured every kind of quarterback turmoil, poor reads, major injuries, shaken confidence, and sideline disputes. When a young quarterback like Shedeur Sanders steps in and appears composed rather than overwhelmed, people notice. The attention comes not just from coaches and reporters, but from the linemen and defensive leaders who have watched previous backups struggle. They are not exchanging doubts, they are sharing nods of approval. Sanders demonstrates instinctive pocket awareness, reliable accuracy, and steady poise, qualities that quickly circulate through team conversations. After years of instability under center, the Browns need someone who can remain calm and effective deep into the season. Although expectations have fallen over time, genuine interest is growing. Praise is coming from teammates who rarely commend anyone unless his performance demands it.